She thought she was just loading ammo until the pilot spotted her classified tattoo at 3 a.m. The night air hummed with tension as Jane crouched behind the dusty crates, her heart pounding like a war drum. She could hardly breathe as the shadows danced around her, inches from where she hastily loaded the last of her ammunition. The moonlight filtered through the cracks, casting eerie patterns on the concrete floor, giving the scene a ghostly feel. But what truly sent chills down her spine was the tattoo blazing on her forearm, hidden under the sleeves of her worn-out jacket. It was an emblem of the elite, a mark only a select few bore. It whispered secrets that could turn lives upside down, and she knew she had to be careful. As she finally slid the last bullet into her pocket, an unexpected gust rattled the doors, causing them to shudder like the very bones of the building were awakening. The cold chill wrapped around Jane like icy fingers, and for a heartbeat, she felt an overwhelming urge to flee. However, the sound of distant engines roared into her ears, a death knell announcing that the clock was ticking. Somewhere in the dark, eyes were watching. She could almost feel the weight of them boring into her back. Every instinct screamed for her to move, to escape this forsaken place before the truth caught up with her. Peering through the gloom, she saw a shape, a figure stepping out of the shadow, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a dying bulb. The pilot. The last person she wanted to see. His expression was grave, eyes flicking to the ink etched into her skin, a mixture of recognition and concern rendering him momentarily speechless. Time froze. The air became thick, charged with electricity, as unspoken words hung heavy between them. Did he recognize the tattoo? Did he know what it meant? The alarms in her head screamed at her to run, but the weight of the moment held her captive. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the tension simmered, the pilot took a step closer, his voice low but urgent. We need to talk about what you've done. The implications hung between them like a loaded gun, the kind that held secrets sharp enough to cut through their lives like a razor. What could he possibly know? The ground tilted beneath her, and Jane felt herself teetering on the edge of a decision she wasn't ready to make. In that moment, reality shattered. She could either confess or deny, risking everything in the process. The question paralyzed her. Could she trust him enough to reveal the depths of her actions? The distant sound of sirens echoed in the night like wailing ghosts, painting an ominous backdrop to their conversation. Jane's mind raced. What were those sirens heralding? Was the past catching up with her? She dared to glance at the tattoo, and suddenly, everything felt so real. The weight of her choices crushed down, her heart screaming for an answer. With every fiber of her being, she wanted to know, what would happen next? The pilot's voice broke through the charged silence like a crack of thunder. You don't understand the gravity of this, Jane. They're coming. He moved closer, urgency painted across his features, and Jane felt her breath hitch in her throat. Your tattoo isn't just a mark, it's a beacon. Her stomach twisted at his words. A beacon? Cold dread washed over her as she glanced toward the door, the faint wail of sirens growing louder, more insistent. She could feel time slipping through her fingers, every second fraught with the potential for disaster. You need to tell me what you know, she demanded, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound firm. He stepped back slightly, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. It's the syndicate. They know about you, about us. I thought we had more time, but he fell silent, his eyes glancing toward the door as if the shadows were alive and conspiring against them. A siren erupted outside, piercing the night, making her skin crawl. The pilot's words twisted around in her mind, speeding up her pulse. What do you mean they know? She pressed, desperation lacing her voice. I haven't done anything that's just it, he interrupted, frustration flooding his tone. Your past actions, your connections, they all lead back to them. They're tracking everything. You're in danger, Jane. The reality of his statement sank in, a weight pressing upon her chest, making it hard to breathe. Her heart raced as she recalled the risks she had taken, her dealings, her choices. The tattoo had seemed like just a personal reminder once, a mark of honor. But now, it felt like a noose tightening around her neck. What are we going to do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hope slipped through her fingers like grains of sand, despair clawing at her insides. We have to move, now. He reached for her arm, but the moment he touched her skin, blinding headlights pierced through the cracked door. The pulse of danger quickened in her veins. They're here. Fear coursed through her, a raw adrenaline that surged into action as she pulled away. What if they see me? What if they recognize the tattoo? Panic swelled, threatening to overwhelm her. They don't know everything, but soon they will. We can't stay here. He glanced back toward the flickering light, assessing their options. We need to hide. Follow me. Before she could respond, he dashed for a narrow side door just beyond the crates. Terror mixed with instinct, and she followed, the sound of heavy boots thudding in the distance a terrifying reminder of their predicament. The door creaked as they slipped through, the night swallowing them in shadow, but then the unmistakable echo of footsteps grew closer, each step a countdown toward their fate. This way. The pilot hissed, urgency slicing through his voice as he motioned deeper into the dark. As they ducked into a narrow alley, the reality of her choices loomed ahead like a dark cloud. Jane's mind raced. How could she have let it come to this? Her past felt like an anchor, dragging her into depths she couldn't escape. Where do we go from here? She asked, fear amplifying every word. The alley stretched ahead, shrouded in darkness, a labyrinth of unknowns. We have to find a safe house, he said, his eyes scanning for a route. But we're not safe yet. If they know your tattoo, they won't stop hunting you. As dread welled up within her, Jane felt the weight of her choices crashing down. What would happen if they were cornered? Were they really running from the syndicate? The fear was suffocating, but mingled with it was a flicker of defiance. Then we fight back, she breathed, determination swerving the tide of panic. Little did they know, the true game was just beginning, shadows lurking with secrets and plots that twisted like a coiling snake. What awaited them in the darkness? Unseen enemies? Turning allies? With every heartbeat echoing her motives, the next decision swung like a pendulum over their heads. Would the truth finally reveal itself, or would it elude them as the night deepened? Jane could feel the thrum of her heartbeat in her ears, drowning out the pounding footsteps behind them. The pilot moved like a shadow, weaving between dumpsters and flickering streetlights, dragging her deeper into the labyrinthine alleyways. Fear had transformed into a raw sense of survival, blistering through her veins. Was she truly ready to fight back? Keep your head down, he whispered urgently, glancing over his shoulder. They're trained to see beyond the obvious. She nodded, muscles tensing as they stumbled into a dimly lit courtyard. The walls loomed high above them, encasing the small space in a vice of brick and shadow. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of trash and desperation. Here, he said, gesturing towards an iron door partially hidden behind a pile of crates. This leads to an underground passage. It's a bit of a maze, but it's safe. He hesitated, then pushed the door open, revealing a set of steep steps leading down into darkness. After you, he urged, but a swirling apprehension gripped her. What if they follow us? That's why we move quickly. If we get separated we won't, she snapped, cutting him off. I'm not going anywhere without you. The words hung between them, thick with gravity. She took a deep breath and stepped down, the air cool against her skin as the door creaked ominously shut behind them. The pilot followed, and they emerged into a dimly lit tunnel. The walls were damp, the sound of dripping water echoing eerily. That tattoo, he began, and she felt her pulse quicken again. How did you get it? It's a story for another time, she replied, but her voice cracked, betraying her calm facade. Memories of reckless choices washed over her, a time too wild to forget. What if they find out about it? They'll find out. It's too late to hide who you are, he said sharply, forcing her to meet his gaze. But we can control our next steps. Before she could respond, a distant shout echoed through the tunnel, slicing through the heavy air. Jane's gut twisted. We're not out of the woods yet, she breathed, her fingers trembling. Stay close, he instructed, moving forward cautiously. They continued through the maze-like passage, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the cold concrete beneath. With each step, her mind raced through potential strategies. Would confronting the syndicate bring her freedom or doom? Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow darting in the distance. Panic surged as she tugged at his sleeve. Did you see that? He froze, eyes narrowing. Get behind me. As she obeyed, her heart pounded so hard she feared it might burst. They pressed against the wall, hidden in the shadows. The distant shout grew louder, then transformed into a clash of voices, thick with urgency. She has to be around here somewhere. One voice snarled. Find her. It was too close. The syndicate was here, and they were hunting her with a vengeance. Gripping her tattooed arm, Jane felt its warmth, a reminder that her past was alive and angry. And most importantly, it was not just hers anymore. Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in, and she turned to the pilot, her eyes wide with resolve. We have to take the fight to them, she said, her voice steady. We can't just run. This is bigger than I thought. His expression shifted, awe and respect mingling as he regarded her. Are you sure? Yes, she declared. I'm done hiding. Before he could answer, a resounding crash echoed from the entrance above, sending tremors through the tunnel. Adrenaline coursed through her as a flood of panic overtook thoughts of strategy. Fractured stone and dust swirled in the air, blinding her momentarily. What now? The pilot shouted over the chaos, and she could see the doubt flicker in his eyes, but she could hear the sirens again, closer than before. Trust me. She yelled back, her determination surging with fiery intensity. This was her moment. As the dust settled and silhouettes emerged from the entrance, she took a step forward, adrenaline sharpening her instincts. Could they really fight back together? Then, without another moment's hesitation, Jane charged into the chaos, ready to meet whatever shadow awaited her, with the pilot right behind her. But as they plunged into the fray, the tumult that ensued would prove much darker than they ever anticipated. What lay ahead was not just a confrontation, but the unraveling of everything Jane thought she knew. Would her past be her ultimate weapon, or her greatest weakness? Jane plunged into the fray, adrenaline surging like wildfire through her veins. Her instincts screamed at her to react, to push and fight and claw her way through the chaos. She had embraced the fight, but was she truly ready to face what lay beyond the dust and confusion? The tunnel erupted into chaos. The figures emerging from the entrance were not just shadows, they were the syndicate. Faces twisted in determination and rage, they poured into the passage with grim intent, fueled by an obsession that made the air electric. Stay with me. The pilot shouted, his grip firm on her arm as he guided her out of the dust storm. The battle raged around them, a flurry of fists and frantic movements. Voices shouted, panic clawed through the air, but in that moment of fury, Jane felt something shift within her. The primal need for survival ignited a fierceness she didn't know she possessed. Pero, he blurted out, to the right. There's an access way. Without hesitation, she followed, ducking low as a fist flew above her head. They ducked into a narrow alcove just in time, pressing their backs against the cold, damp wall. The sounds of conflict faded slightly but remained ominous. I can't keep this up forever. He yelled, breathless. We need a way out now. Jane felt the weight of their predicament press upon her, suffocating almost. But then, her attention caught on the glint of something metallic against the wall. The faint outline of a lock caught her eye, mind racing as she recognized a possible escape route. "There!" she shouted, pointing to the lock. "If we can get that door open, we might slip past them." The pilot squinted at the lock, assessing. "It could lead to who knows where. But it's better than being caught here. Then we take that risk." Anxiety twisted in her gut, but the fire of determination pushed it aside. As he moved to examine the lock, Jane's heartbeat pounded so loudly, she feared it would give away their position. "I'll break it," he said, somewhat grimly. He stepped back, prepared to use brute force when another shout echoed through the passage, sending a chill down her spine. They weren't safe yet. "Wait," she urged. "If you make noise, they'll know where we are." He paused, recognition dawning in his eyes. "I'll have to be quick." She held her breath, feeling the pressure of their situation spike. As he brought his shoulder into the door with a forceful thrust, Jane's ears perked up. The hallway was filling with footsteps, hurried, angry. They were onto them. With a splintering crack, the door gave way, swinging open violently to reveal a darkened corridor beyond. Fear mingled with hope. A narrow escape route was now theirs, but how far would it lead them from the danger that chased them? "Go. Now." The pilot urged, nudging her forward. Together, they darted through the doorway, still hearing the frantic shouts from behind them. Jane winced as a voice bellowed, "They went that way. Don't lose them." They sprinted down the dim corridor, finding it peppered with obstacles, possible traps, clutter, remnants of lives once lived. Each step was calculated, as if the floors themselves conspired against them. "This way," he called out, turning sharply. They navigated through debris, the thrill of the chase filling her with an intoxicating mix of fear and adrenaline. The pilot paused momentarily to glance over his shoulder, ensuring they remained unseen. Jane caught her breath, adrenaline dulling as they rounded another corner. But in that moment of reprieve, a sense of dread flooded back. In how long could they run? And was she really ready to confront what awaited them? In the distance, she heard the growl of engines and the shriek of sirens closing in, slicing through the silence like knives. This battle wasn't just in these dark tunnels, it was sprawling into the streets above. "What now?" she panted, gazing at him, the panic returning. "What more can we do?" The pilot hesitated, searching her face as if she held the answer. In that fleeting glance, Jane felt a chill rip through her because she was beginning to realize, the truth was far more sinister than she had anticipated. And then, through the haze of uncertainty, the ground beneath them trembled. Something massive approached. The sound of engines abrupt and ominous. "What is that?" she stammered, fear clawing at her throat. Then, a roar erupted from above, followed by blinding lights spilling into their corridor, illuminating the darkness. Was it help or betrayal? Jane's breath hitched in her throat as she glanced at the pilot, and they were both united in a single moment of horrified anticipation. What had they just stepped into? Jane squinted against the blinding glare, heart thundering in her chest. The lights felt like they were burning through her skin, threatening to expose every secret she had ever buried. What was waiting in the light? Almost instinctively, she pulled back, but the pilot pressed forward, his resolve hardening. "Stay close," he muttered, pushing past Jane and into the flood of brightness. The origin of the light soon became evident. A sleek military vehicle hummed ominously, its doors swung wide as figures clad in tactical gear poured out, scanning the shadows with grim efficiency. The syndicate goons? Or something worse? "We're dead if they see us," Jane whispered, anxiety bubbling in her throat. But the pilot shook his head, eyes darting from side to side, hands clenched into fists. "Don't move," he warned, and she felt the tension radiating from him. The two of them pressed against the wall, breath hitching in sync as the soldiers advanced. A commanding officer barked orders into a radio, jabbing fingers at the ground. "Secure the area. They can't have gotten far." The pilot's gaze fixed intensely on the soldier closest to them, a veteran with a scar running across his brow. Jane felt a chill as recognition washed over him. "That S. Miller," he breathed. "He was part of my team once." Her stomach flipped. And the pilot's expression shifted, resolve cracking under the weight of memories. "He doesn't forget easily. If he sees me, we're done." The sergeant strutted closer, boots echoing hollowly against the concrete, his eyes scanning every nook and cranny. Each breath Jane took felt heavier, stifling her ability to think. Could they retrace their steps? Would the chaos give them a chance? "Think, Jane." She chastised herself. "You need to act." But before she could form a plan, Miller's gaze flicked to their alcove. Time slowed, and she swore she could hear her heart beat like a drum in the silence. "Check that side," he ordered, a new level of intensity in his voice. Without warning, the pilot dove forward, urgency sparking in his eyes. "Run!" he yelled, leaping into the open corridor, and Jane followed instinctively. The world erupted as bullets tore through the air, the cacophony of gunfire exploding around them. Jane's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps as they sprinted. But all around them was chaos, flashes of light, shouts, and the whir of above, thick with adrenaline and fear. "Through here!" he shouted, dragging her into a narrow, dimly lit side passage just off the main corridor. The walls were slick with moisture, and Jane pressed against the cold surface, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her, hunger for survival overshadowing her dread. "There's an exit up ahead. Just a little further." The pilot's voice cracked with urgency. With every ounce of strength, Jane pushed forward, each step feeling like a battle against invisible forces trying to drag her down. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted. Suddenly, Jane stumbled, gasping as pain shot through her ankle. "Go! I'll catch up!" she cried impulsively. But the pilot grabbed her arm, his grip unyielding. "Not a chance. Not without you." His eyes locked onto hers, burning with determination. Just as he pulled her back into motion, the lights behind them flickered ominously. The soldiers were regrouping, millisecond by millisecond inching closer. Jane's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an escape, it was a countdown. Every second they spent evading capture hid the truth that leered at them, ready to burst from the shadows. They burst through the exit and into an open clearing. Jane caught her breath, scanning the dimly lit street beyond. "Where do we go?" she snapped. He turned to her, steely resolve etched in his features. "We fight." Before she could respond, the roar of engines crescendoed, more vehicles, more danger, closing in fast. With a desperate glance, they exchanged silent stakes of determination. It was now or never. Just as they jolted into motion, shadows poured from the vehicles, and the first harsh shout sliced through the air. The moment had arrived. Everything they fought against converged into a singular clash. But as Jane stole a breath, the question lingered on her lips: who would emerge from this chaos, victor or prey? Jane's heart raced as the distant scream faded, overtaken by the thudding of boots on asphalt. The shadows from the vehicles shifted, a torrent of armed figures spilling into the night like a waking nightmare. Adrenaline surged, blurring her vision, and she felt the pilot's steady hand on her shoulder, pulling her back. "Focus, Jane. We either find cover or fight." His voice broke through her haze, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "Cover," she gasped, scanning the perimeter for anything: a car, a dumpster, something to hide behind. Fleeting glimpses of the soldiers' faces struck her with familiarity, like ghosts of their past invading the present. In that moment, Miller's rugged silhouette loomed large in her mind. She stumbled toward a nearby truck, its paint chipped and battered, but it stood providing a semblance of safety. The pilot followed close behind, pushing her down into the shadows cast by the vehicle. They crouched low, peering around it as gunfire erupted nearby. "What do we do now?" Jane whispered, panic clawing at her throat. The pilot's jaw tightened. "I need to distract them." "You get to safety." "Not a chance." Jane snapped, limbs trembling with anger and fear. I'm in this with you. His eyes softened for just a moment, a flicker of appreciation before he steeled himself. Fine. Cover your ears. Before she could respond, he darted from their hiding place, yelling at the top of his lungs. Hey! Over here. The soldiers turned, momentarily distracted. It was just enough for Jane's pulse to quicken. Without thinking, she reached for a discarded rock, her instincts kicking in. As it flew through the air, it struck the nearest soldier square in the chest. He staggered back, bewildered, and grabbed his radio, his shout lost in the din. Nice shot. The pilot shouted, darting back toward her. But we can't keep this up. We need a plan. Jane's mind raced, piecing together what they had learned. There's gotta be some kind of nearby rendezvous point, a place they'd return to. We could slip in and look. He interrupted, eyes widening. The old warehouse district. Right. They'll be gathering intel, moving gear. Hope surged through Jane's veins. We can commandeer something. Get out of here. Just as they prepared to move, gunfire erupted dangerously close. A bullet ricocheted off the metal frame of the truck, and Jane cursed under her breath, crouching lower. What now? The pilot scanned their surroundings wildly. We make a run for it, follow me. With resolve, they sprang into motion, zigzagging toward the shadows cast by the looming warehouses. Each footfall drummed in her ears, a haunting reminder of the closeness of death. Jane felt alive and terrified, a cocktail of survival instincts fueling her. They ducked into the maze of steel and stray shadows, adrenaline obliterating pain. Whispered voices carried through the air, distant orders issuing from soldiers who were tightening their encirclement. You're good at this like nothing ever happened, Jane said, trying to cut through the fear, her breath hitching with exertion. It's like riding a bike. Just do what has to be done. His voice held a strange confidence, making her feel stronger. But then doubt crept in like a thief in the night. What will happen when we're cornered? What if we don't make it out? Jane locked her gaze onto his, forcing a smile. We're making it out. I promise. Just then, the doors of the nearest warehouse creaked open, shadows spilling forth. The familiar patter of boots returned, closing in on them. The pilot glanced back, eyes steely. This is it. We either confront them or slip through that door and fight our way out. Or maybe find out what's really happening inside. Her voice was barely a whisper, a dawning realization slicing through her fear. Maybe his stare shifted to the now unlocked doorway, anticipation hanging in the air. With a nod, they approached the entrance, hearts pounding. The darkness inside beckoned them, filled with potential danger, or answers. And as they stepped into the unknown, one truth became glaringly evident: the outcome of this moment could change everything. What awaited them behind those doors? Answers, desperation, or betrayal? Jane couldn't shake the feeling they were stepping into a storm. The chill of the air wrapped around Jane like a heavy blanket as they slipped through the warehouse door. The darkness engulfed them, and she felt the pilot's reassuring presence beside her, his breath ragged, yet steady. They paused, their eyes adjusting. Shadows danced along the walls, distorted figures of clutter and machinery barely visible. The musty smell of old wood and rusted metal filled her lungs. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, pushing back the fear gnawing at her mind. Stay low, he murmured as they crept deeper into the belly of the building. Sunlight had long abandoned this place, leaving only the dim glow of flickering overhead lights. Each step echoed ominously as they navigated around crates and broken machinery. A rustle sounded nearby, and Jane froze, heart hammering like a sledgehammer. The pilot turned toward the noise, eyes narrowed. We're not alone. Her throat felt tight, the tension palpable. What if they're here for us? She hissed, creeping back against the wall, pulse quickening as silence engulfed them. The pilot reached for his weapon, positioning himself protectively in front of her. Two silhouettes emerged, their voices crisp and clear, bouncing off the walls. Jane crouched low, trying to discern their words. "Security's tight tonight. No room for mistakes," one soldier said, his voice filled with urgency. "They got intel about potential leaks. If they find anything in this district." His sentence trailed off, and Jane felt the weight of his unspoken words pressing down on her. "Yeah, we can't let anyone get away. Especially not after what went down at the bunker," the other soldier replied, voice filled with a foreboding that sent chills skating down Jane's spine. The pilot motioned to Jane, eyes wide and fearful. She mimicked his movement, their breaths synchronized in a shared rhythm of survival. She peered around the corner, just enough to see the soldiers digging through crates, their focus on supplies rather than the potential intruders lurking in the shadows. "What do we do?" she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "Wait for them to move. We need to slip out without being seen," he replied, teeth gritted. As if the universe was conspiring against them, the first soldier suddenly laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You know they're loading something big in here. Could be our way out if we play it right." A thrill shot through Jane. "What do you mean?" The soldier continued, heard whispers about a shipment. "Big enough to cause a stir." Ambition laced his voice, and Jane felt her skin prickle, the pilot's brow furrowed, pondering a plan. "We could use that to our advantage." Before Jane could process the thought, a metallic clang echoed. The soldiers jerked to attention, their eyes scanning the darkness. "Let's check it out," one suggested, the tension thickening. "Move now." The pilot hissed, and they ducked further into the shadows, hearts racing. Jane felt the weight of her options hanging in the air. Could they really take advantage of this chaos? As they crept through the maze of crates, the potential for discovery loomed close. A sudden crash broke the silence as something toppled over in the corner, followed by curses from the soldiers. "Did you hear that? Let us go," the first soldier urged. The urgency in his voice quickened Jane's pulse. "Get ready," the pilot breathed, positioning himself inches from the corner. They listened closely, straining against the chaos brewing just outside their small refuge. Each heartbeat felt like it could break the fragile silence. The sound of boots drew closer, thudding heavily against the steel floor, all thoughts of escape inching further from Jane's mind. "We're running out of time," she whispered, fear knotting in her stomach. Just as she prepared to confront the unknown, something caught her eye, a glimpse of an armored vehicle through a cracked window. "The shipment," she murmured, eyes gleaming with hope. But what lay ahead? Would they risk everything to seize this moment, or would the storm of chaos swallow them whole? The choice, and its dire consequences, echoed in the darkness. They had stepped into a storm indeed. The soldier's footsteps reverberated, heavy and closing in like a predator zeroing in on its prey. Jane's breath quickened as she peered around the edge of the crate. The armored vehicle loomed in the murky light of the warehouse, its engine humming softly, the promise of escape intertwined with danger. "What are you thinking?" the pilot whispered urgently, his eyes darting around for threats. Jane could feel the weight of his stare, the expectation boiling in the air, pressing her to act. "That shipment could be our ticket out. If we can just get to the vehicle." "No way, we can just waltz out there," he whispered, voice tense. "We need a plan, and we need to be smart." More clatter echoed, drowning out her thoughts. A metal door slammed against the concrete floor, and the soldiers exchanged panicked glances. "What was that?" one grunted suspiciously, drawing nearer. Panic surged through Jane. They were running out of time. She felt something deep inside her, a mix of fear and determination. "We can distract them," she blurted out. "There has to be something we can throw." The pilot shot her a look, uncertainty clouding his features. "You would create a noise. That's dangerous." But Jane was already scanning the shadows and clutter for anything that could help them. Her eyes landed on a heavy iron bolt lying on the ground, slightly covered in dust. She motioned to it, heart racing. Just he hesitated, throw it in the opposite direction. The decision was made in an instant. Jane scooped it up, her hands trembling as she took aim. With all her strength, she hurled the bolt away, the clatter reverberating against the walls, echoing like a siren call. The soldiers jerked toward the sound, instinctively moving away from their original post. It worked. Now. The pilot urged, and they slipped out from behind the crates, hearts pounding. They sprinted to the armored vehicle, the adrenaline roaring in Jane's ears. Just as they reached the door, the soldier's frantic voice cried behind them, "Shift change means the dock is open. Move. Get in." The pilot shoved her forward. As she scrambled inside, Jane felt a rush of relief. They were so close, but before she could catch her breath, something caught her eye in the rearview mirror. A figure rushed out of the shadows, another soldier. "Hit the gas." She screamed, fear clawing at her throat. Just a second he was frantically tugging at gear levers, eyes wild. Suddenly, the engine roared, drowning out the chaos behind them. Tires screeched against the concrete as they tore away, the world beyond the windshield fading into a blur of color and sound, but just as satisfaction swelled in her chest, the soldier's voice crackled over a radio. "There's a breach. Engage the perimeter." What did that mean? Jane's heart sank as the weight of the driver's desperation permeated the air. "They know we're gone, they'll be tracking us. Then we need to find the others. Fast." He replied, eyes darting from the road ahead to the side mirrors. "Others?" A knot tightened in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "Not just us." He kept his voice steady, but tension clung to every word. "The shipment isn't just supplies. It's personnel, too. Those doors are about to swing wide, and they will have no intention of letting us slip away. The storm is just beginning." Jane gasped, the realization crashing over her. What had they unleashed? The shadows were creeping back in around them, and they had just fed the beast outside. "It's not just about survival anymore. It's about the fight," he continued, resolve hardening in his voice. The pilot's focus locked onto the road ahead, determination replacing his earlier hesitation. "Hold tight, Jane. We're going to need all the courage we can muster." But just as hope flickered between them, a blaring alarm rang out from the rear. "Get down!" she yelled instinctively as the vehicle lurched dangerously. Jane's stomach twisted as they veered off the path and the chaos morphed around them into something far darker than anticipated. Would they find a way to outsmart the madness, or was this the end of their desperate journey? Cold dread settled heavy in her chest as they plunged deeper into the unknown. What was waiting for them at the end? The vehicle jolted violently, tires skidding across gravel as the world outside whipped past like a nightmarish blur. Jane's heart raced, a cacophony of dread building inside her chest. She could barely comprehend the sirens wailing behind them, shrieking like banshees hunting for their prey. "Hold on!" the pilot shouted, wresting control of the steering wheel. His muscles tensed, and Jane caught a glimpse of his face, pale and tight, framed by fear. They were both in the deep end now, together plummeting toward an uncertain fate. "Where are we going?" she gasped, panic spilling into her voice. "Back way to the old docks," he replied, eyes scanning the rearview mirror. "It's the only way to lose them." "Old docks." The words felt foreign in her mouth. Those docks were rumored to be haunted by the ghosts of lost shipments and forgotten souls. As they rounded a sharp corner, the truck bucked wildly. Jane felt her stomach twist. Glancing back, she saw flashing lights cutting through the darkness, fierce and hungry. They were coming closer, gaining ground like wolves on a wounded deer. "Can you drive faster?" she urged, her voice rising with the panic that gripped her. "Faster? I'm already at the limit." He gritted his teeth and slammed his foot down harder, the engine growling in protest. The landscape whizzed by, rusty containers and scrap metal appeared and disappeared in swift succession. Suddenly, a loud explosion shattered the night. Jane flinched, and everything went silent for a fraction of a heartbeat. She stole another glance back. The soldier from the warehouse had been armed with something serious. A trail of smoke curled above a flipped vehicle, flames licking the edges like a hungry beast. "Did they hit us?" Jane asked, heart thundering. "No, but it won't be long," he shot back, leaning forward as if willing the truck to fly. Just then, an obscene crunch ripped through the air. Jane's heart sank as she realized they weren't the only ones on the road. From the shadows emerged armed figures, their silhouettes against the orange glow of the fire catching her breath in her throat. "What now? Get ready to duck," he shouted as he jerked the wheel to the right, veering off the main path and racing toward a narrow, half-hidden exit. The figures fell in behind them, like shadows issued from a nightmare. As they pushed further into the dimly lit streets, Jane's mind raced. She needed to understand who the others were. "What do you know about this shipment?" she yelled over the roaring engine. "It's more than munitions. It's the key to a bigger operation, a project gone wrong." Anything Jane would have said fizzled into uncertainty, the weight of his words fueling her anxiety. Her thoughts whirled, tangling with images of their possible allies choking on despair. Then, desperation led to action. "If there are others, we have to get in contact with them. Do you have any radio or backup comms?" He grimaced, wrestling with the steering wheel. "Only a handheld, far too risky. But we can improvise. If we can make it to the docks, we can secure a connection." Jane nodded, determination igniting her spirit. The shadows were creeping closer, but she felt something crackling within her, something that whispered they were far from defeated. As they approached a fork in the road, a pair of headlights burst into view. "Incoming!" Jane yelled, eyes widening. A sleek vehicle barreled toward them, its intent unmistakable. "I've got to give it a try," the pilot said, the words laced with grim intent. He swerved hard, opting for the alleyway to the left, but it was too late. The headlights sped up, tires screeching dangerously against the asphalt. The shadows were no longer just lurking behind them, they were now in full pursuit. "Brace yourself," he shouted, locking eyes with hers. Jane's breath caught in her throat as a deafening crash echoed behind them. This was it. Would they escape the growing storm, or was this the end of the line? With every ounce of breath, she clutched onto hope. But hope was about to face an unimaginable test. What lay ahead would shake them both to the core. The ground shook beneath their feet as sirens wailed and gunshots echoed like thunder, pounding through Jane's chest. There was no turning back now. "Drive!" she yelled, fear sharpening her words as their armored vehicle sped into the chaotic fray of abandoned docks. The scenery was a blur of shadows, twisted metal, and crumbling buildings, echoes of struggles fought long before their time, but hope flickered like a lone candle in a storm. "We need to find cover." The pilot's voice pierced through Jane's swirling thoughts. They shredded through the narrow pathways, their escape illuminated by bursts of fire reflecting off the slick, rain-soaked pavement. She could feel the adrenaline igniting her veins, invigorating her resolve. Ahead, she spotted a decayed warehouse. "There!" she shouted, pointing desperately. "It might have an entrance." The pilot expertly swung the vehicle toward it, gravel crunching under the tires as they skidded to a halt. Bracing herself, Jane flung the door open and raced toward the dimly lit building, shadows shifting within its depths like ancient spirits. Inside, the silence felt ominous, a deceptive calm before the inevitable storm. They could hear footsteps approaching outside, determined, relentless. An icy shiver cascaded down her spine. "We can't stay here," she said, heart pounding against her ribs. They ducked behind a pile of rusted machinery, arms wrapped around their legs, panting harshly. "Do you hear that?" the pilot whispered, straining to listen. The distant cries of soldiers echoed again, the voices determined to extinguish their fluttering spark of hope. Jane's mind raced. "We have to make noise, distract them." Ideas flashed through her head, sharp as broken glass. Maybe we can set off a signal. Something to buy us time. Suddenly, a daring plan crystallized in her mind. If that shipment was indeed the key to something bigger, maybe they could use it against them. Wait, the shipment, she stammered, her eyes wild with possibility. If we can take it or sabotage it, we might be able to send the syndicate scrambling. The pilot nodded, excitement igniting in his gaze. But we have to act fast. If we run into any of their men, it'll be game over. He paused for a moment, the tension in the air thickening. Let us draw them away first. I'll create a distraction. You sneak in. No, she replied, determination flooding her voice. We're in this together. I won't stand by while you risk everything. The pilot nodded, their fates intertwined. Then let us do this. They slipped out of their hiding place, careful and quiet as they maneuvered deeper into the belly of the warehouse. Goosebumps prickled her skin with every echoing footstep. With each heartbeat, Jane felt the weight of the choices she had made seep into her bones. There was no turning back. Suddenly, a metallic clang rang through the air, dark shapes emerging from the shadows, guns raised. There they are. One shouted. Get them. Run. The pilot shouted, bolting toward the nearest exit, Jane hot on his heels. Action-fueled adrenaline as they ducked between crates, breaths quick and shallow. Her pulse drummed in her ears, drowning out the chaos around. But she remembered the tattoo on her arm. It was a beacon, yes, but now it ignited a fire inside her. Without warning, Jane skidded to a halt. There. She shouted, spotting a loading bay door. That might lead to the rear entrance. Together, they scrambled inside, teamwork firing their movements as if they were synchronized dancers. Through the narrow opening, they glimpsed the armored vehicle, men bustling around with urgent whispers. It was their chance. That's it. The pilot grinned. Now we just have to get in and drive out. But just then, the world around them erupted. Gunfire rattled the air, shuddering through Jane's trembling shoulders. Get to the vehicle. She urged, adrenaline overriding any fear. They dashed into the chaos, weaving through crates and shadows as chaos erupted. Go. The pilot shouted, voice steady as steel. I'll cover you. She could see the armored vehicle, its dark frame a vessel of freedom. Almost there. She panted, fear and determination blending as she ran like the wind. Just as she reached for the door, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. Miller. His eyes widened in disbelief. You! He roared, aiming directly at her. Before Jane could react, the pilot tackled him, their bodies colliding with a heavy thud. Get in! He shouted, voice strained as they fought. Jane hesitated, torn between moving forward and rushing to help, but then she made her choice. No. You're not beating us today. With one fierce glint in her eye, she hurled herself into the vehicle, fumbling for the controls. The engine roared to life, vibrating through her hands. Come on. The pilot wrestled Miller down with a determined grip. Go. Now. He shouted, a primal command echoing in her ears. Jane hit the gas, tires screaming as they wheeled out of the warehouse and into freedom, an explosion behind them shaking the ground as they left the chaos in their wake. Drive. The pilot yelled, adrenaline electrifying his words. We're free. But Jane's heart sank. Would they ever truly be safe again? As they sped down the derelict road, new uncertainties loomed. But one glimmer of hope remained, they were alive. Together. And that meant they could fight back. As the vehicle disappeared into the night, slipping between shadows and whispers, Jane felt the weights lift. They had each other, and that meant the fight was far from over. Together, they would uncover the truth that lingered in the air. The syndicate had to answer for everything. Their journey had just begun, not as mere survivors, but as warriors destined to reclaim what was theirs. Now, the only mission they had left was to bring the fight home, and as the sun painted the horizon in shades of dawn, Jane knew one thing: she was done hiding. The world was waiting, and the past would no longer define her. You need to subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Your support is everything, and only true fans grasp the importance of these actions.